Welcome back to Success with Steven. Today, I'm making a video on a comment that suggested that we discuss this, and it's how to pay your credit card bill. And I'm going to try to give the simplest explanation that I can, just so that it's very easy to understand. So welcome back. I'm Steven Smith, and in this channel, we discuss finance tips, business strategies, and anything to help improve your financial literacy. One of the most important things that you definitely want to understand is your credit card bill, how that works, how your statement cycle date actually works, and the difference between your cycle close date, your billing due date, and everything in between. So we're going to jump into first talking about the breakdown of each of the important dates. And then I'm going to give you a easy to follow diagram, and then we'll take a look at one of my statements. All right, so let's get right into it. The first thing that we're going to discuss is your statement cycle. And again, we're going to make this very easy to explain and watch all the way until the end, and it should make sense. So a credit card statement cycle is around a 1 month period. When you look at your credit card statement, it may be 28 days, 29, 30, it kind of ranges, but it's somewhere around 1 month. In between this period, you'll have your start date, and then you'll have your close date. Your new transactions during this time will impact your next credit card bill. Whatever transactions you make in that cycle period will be due on your next payment due date. Now, when your statement is produced, it will show a statement balance that is calculated by taking the balance at the beginning of the billing cycle, adding all the new charges made during the cycle, and subtracting any payments that were made during that cycle. All right, so it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Again, when we get to the end, you're going to have a better understanding of how does that impact your credit score, how that increases your credit score, and how it could potentially decrease your credit score depending on when you pay, and of course the best time to pay during your cycle. All right, so the start date. This is the beginning of the statement cycle. All your transactions from this date to the close date will determine what you're paying next month for the due date. And the reporting date. This is the date which your card issuer will report your balance to the credit bureaus. So on this particular day, whatever your balance says is what gets reported to the bureaus. If the balance that you see on there is usually higher than 30%, it could negatively affect your credit score. My recommendation is always keeping it at 10% utilization. All right. Now, this reporting date can be anytime during the month, but it's best to assume that it'll be around the time of your statement closing date. Now, in my experience, I don't know if I've mentioned it on here, but I worked at 3 different banks. In my experience, usually the closing date is 3 days after your due date. The day after that is the start of a new cycle. But again, we'll go over that, and it'll be very easy to understand. Now, the due date, this is the date by which you must pay at least the minimum amount due. We'll talk about that and why you don't want to pay just the minimum. I mean, of course, because you don't want to get interest, but once I'm able to actually show you a statement, that will make, a lot more sense. The due date is usually about 3 weeks after the statement cycle date, and failure to pay at least the minimum by the due date will result in a late fee, or if it's just the minimum and not the full amount, the full balance, then it'll result in interest. All right, so this is the example that I wanted to give. It's going to be very, very basic, and it should be pretty easy to understand. So I took these exact same dates from my actual statement cycle on one of my credit cards. Now, the start date for my credit card is March 19th, 2024. That is the beginning of my statement cycle. Whatever I spend from March 19th, 2024 to February 18th, 2024, whatever I spend in that period will then be due on May 15th, 2024. So check this out. At the end of your statement cycle date, whatever balance you have currently gets reported to the credit bureaus, and it becomes the balance you need to pay on the next due date. So let's use this for example. If I wanted to make sure that I always used 10% or less on my credit card, and let's use a real example. This credit card has a limit of $2,000, right? Okay. Well, let's take $2,000. It doesn't matter what I spent from March 19th to March 18th. What I know is before this cycle date closes on the 18th, I need to only have 200 because that's 10% of 2,000 or less than that. So let's say from March 19th to April the 17th, let's say I spent $1,800. On the 17th of April, I'm going to make sure that I pay $1,600 because that's going to leave me with $200. So on April 18th, that's my last statement cycle date. That's the closing date. Whatever balance I have on the 19th of April, which will be a new cycle date, that's the balance that they're going to report to the credit bureaus. Like they're going to take a snapshot of that. That's the reporting amount. And then that's going to be due for me to pay on May 15th, 2024. Hopefully that makes sense and it sounds really, really easy. So everyone's credit card is different. For this particular credit card, if I pay in the same day, I just transfer funds to my credit card, the payment hits immediately. Now for your credit card, you'll know how it works. Some of them you pay, it takes like 5 days for that to actually affect the balance. If you know that's your credit card, make sure you will pay it 5 days prior to the cycle close date. That way you can get that 10% or less reporting. So I'm going to give you an example of what I do. When my new cycle date starts on the 19th of every month, I just use my credit card like normal. And let's say maybe 2 weeks later, I just pay it in full. I just pay it. Whatever I've spent, or I pay it at the end of each week. I might just pay it at the end of each week. I've been using my card for the last 7 days. I pay it. By the time I get to the end of my cycle date, I already know I've been paying on my card. I've been using it. I paid whatever was due on the last due date, of course, because if I had just $200 or less left, whatever I paid on that card automatically goes to the balance that I owe. So I don't have to worry about that or getting interest. Cool. I make sure that no matter what, on the 17th, it gets paid down to 200 or less. That's how I'm always going to be at 10% or less. And as I use it and as I pay it, I'll always pay the previous balance. So I'll never get interest either. That is the way that you can perfectly pay your credit card and you'll never get interest and you'll always have 10% or less for your utilization, which will give you the highest credit score possible. And to the credit bureaus, it'll look like you pay your bill on time and you always use way less than what's available to you, which shows that you're a responsible individual when it comes to money management. Now, some people will probably ask, because I know if you're watching this video, this must not be common knowledge to you. Why don't you pay the balance in full? The reason why we don't pay the balance in full is because if you were to pay the entire amount and you let that report to the credit bureaus, that just looks like inactivity. I'm going to give you an example because, like I said, I've worked at 3 different banks. There were a lot of seniors who would have auto pay for their credit card where throughout the year, it would just look like they never had a balance because they would always pay it before the statement cycle date closed. So it would always be zero. They would then call and they would want to know, why was my credit card account automatically closed? Or why did my credit card limit get reduced? Then I have to go into their notes, read it, come to find out, it looked like their card was not being used. Banks only have so much money to lend. If you have a $20,000 limit and you're reporting a zero balance every single month, you know what they're going to do? They're going to drop your limit down to $5,000 because you weren't using it anyway. Why? You have no activity that ever reports. Or on the other end, if you don't use it at all, they're going to send you a correspondence saying this card's never being used. We're going to close your account because there's no point in having a credit card open that doesn't have any activity at all. And if they don't at least spend something within that time frame and let it report, they will close your entire credit card account. I've seen it a bunch of times, and I've talked to a lot of angry clients when that happened. So those are two important reasons why you want to make sure that you let a balance report, and you want to make sure that, of course, if you have no activity, that's not going to help your credit score. So you always want to make sure that you have something reporting. That way you can get the maximum amount of points for low utilization. That way you can keep your credit limit and you don't get your account closed. And the most important thing, again, most people are afraid of interest. If you understand how your statement cycle date works, you'll never pay interest. Anything that you spend in this date between March 19th and April 18th is not due until May 15th. And if you have $200 or less, if you make your payment weekly, it always goes to the previous balance first. So technically, by you making a payment, even if you have new transactions, those transactions aren't due until June the 15th. So when you spend $300 and you pay $300, that first $200 goes towards what was going to be due on May 15th. You'll never get interest. And I hope that makes sense to people. Because again, I used to have to explain this a lot on the phone. So I know that it would be very confusing. But the best day to pay your credit card, in my opinion, will at least be 3 to 5 days before the statement cycle close date. And you want to make sure that whatever balance is left on that close date, because it'll be different for you, you always leave 10% or less, not zero, 10% or less. I would say 10 to 2% is a sweet spot. Even if you leave 1%, because I do it on this account sometimes too, that's still fine, which out of a $2,000 credit limit would be $20. That's 1% of $2,000. I leave $20, which is perfectly fine. So you'll have to take a look at your credit card statement, and you'll have to determine, and it may be different verbiage. When your start date, when is your end date, what's your due date, and you can pretty much have a strategy of how to do this. Again, I feel like an easy strategy is pay it every week. After you've used the card, buy what you need for the week, pay it. That way you don't overspend. And then make sure on the due date, on the closing statement cycle date, depending on your credit card, because everybody's credit card is different. Just make sure that you know that some credit cards don't adjust the payment when you pay in the same day. Some take a few days. That's why I'm saying 3 to 5. For me, I just pay on the 17th. Whatever I pay it down, 200 or less, that reports, I'm good. That's how I do it. But for you, you may have to do it a couple days prior. But this, to me, is the easiest breakdown for you to understand exactly how statement cycles work. And now I'm going to actually pull up the actual statement that goes with this account. Now, as you can see, this is a Navy Federal Cash Rewards Visa card. And it lets you know right here, the minimum payment due is $20. I want to make sure that we don't get that confused. The new balance is $194. That's what I need to pay in full to not have interest. $20 is the minimum payment. That's the least amount you have to pay so that you don't get a late payment or get a late reporting. Okay. But it lets you know if we do not receive your minimum payment by the date listed above, you may have a $20 late fee and your APRs may be increased up to the penalty, which is an APR of 18%. They also give you a warning, minimum payment warning. If you make only the minimum payment each period, you will pay more in interest and it will take you longer to pay off your balance. For example, if you make no additional charges using this card and each month you pay $20, you will pay off the balance shown on this statement in about 11 months, and you will end up paying an estimated total of $211. So if you were only paying the minimum payment every single month on a small balance like $194, it would take you almost a year to pay it off. And not only that, you would pay over 100%, which means I would pay more than I actually had for my balance. So that's just a really small example of why you need to be cognizant of not just making minimum payments, and why credit cards in particular have really, really, really high interest rates. So that's just for $194. You could only imagine what it would be if you had like $10,000. That's why sometimes people get in the credit card debt and it's hard to get out of it, because they don't understand how something as simple as 18% and only paying the minimum payment can be that costly. That is a lot. So, let's keep that in mind. Now, I intentionally did this. This wasn't a mistake on my part. I am trying to get my credit limit increased on this card to eventually around 50,000. Now, one of the ways that you can get a credit limit increase, and this is, again, I've worked at banks, so I'm not saying it's the same for everybody. This is just what I've learned. Okay. If you end up letting the maximum balance report, but you pay it in full, when you go to ask for a credit limit increase, in my experience, you're more likely to get a credit limit increase because it shows that it'll show that you basically almost used the maximum of your card, but then you paid it all off. So then naturally for banks, they're going to be thinking, okay, if he can pay the full amount of this credit limit and it's always, like almost hitting the limit, we can increase that credit score. Now, that can be a double-edged sword sometimes, but from my experience, when I've had people who have almost used their full credit card limit and they keep paying it off in full, if they did ask for another one and got denied, they could then talk to an underwriting team that can take a look at their profile, and they might be able to do a manual limit increase, because they could say, hey, every month I use the entire $2,000 balance, and as you can see, for the last 6 months, I paid it in full. I would just like to get it increased to 10,000 so that I wouldn't use it. Excuse me. Now, that strategy may not work for everybody, but I've seen people do it at the banks that I've worked at. It works sometimes. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that it works. Another strategy is to make multiple payments to show that, man, I keep using this card and I keep having to pay it. Like if you made 6 or 7 payments in one statement cycle, that's also going to tell them, oh, they might need more limit because they keep making so many payments because they keep almost hitting the limit. Either one is good, and you could the other one, you can also, maintain good utilization. Another thing I want to make mention of is, because some people, they may leave a comment like, yeah, but then that's going to ruin your utilization and it's going to bring your score down if you do that. Here's the thing. Your credit score only matters when you need to apply for something. If I'm not applying for something or I need something, it doesn't matter. Like, your credit score is a tool. All this stuff is just a tool. You don't have to maintain a good high credit score all the time. I could do this strategy and next month I pay it off, I'm back to a 750. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I could do it's utilization can change in a cycle. If I use 100% of my credit card, I'll drop by 50 points. Okay, next month I pay it like this, 10%, it goes up by 50 points. It doesn't matter. It's again, these are all tools. When I need my credit score to be high, I'll make it high. If I don't need it, it doesn't matter at the time. Just to think about that, because again, It doesn't have to always be, it doesn't matter. These are just tools. These are all just tools. So I had a previous balance of $1,991.47. Again, I did that intentionally, and I left that balance there. As you can see, I immediately made a payment of $2,173.41 because I had some pending transactions during the cycle. I spent $375.94, which left me with a balance of $194, which then made my utilization. It made it like 9%, right around there, like closer to 10. And that was it. And then, my score just goes back up. But see, my statement cycle close date is March 18th, 2024, right there. And my new statement cycle starts on the 19th. So everything I spent from basically February 19th to March the 18th, everything I spent is now due on April the 15th. And on April 15th, I just have to pay $194. And like I said, I usually use my card for the week and then pay it. So this has already been paid. The $194 is already paid because I just, I use it, I pay it. So I don't even have to worry about that. I have no new balance. I won't get any interest because I already paid it. It's done. And then I'll keep using my card up until the point that I get to around maybe April 17th, April 16th, and then I'll pay it down to 10% or less, which will be $200 or less. And that's all I do for the most part. I'll probably continue to let big balances kind of sit, or I'll continue making multiple payments. I do both. So that way I can give this bank reason to increase my credit score. And even if they deny me and I talk to someone, I could say, oh, look at my last 6 months. I spend the money, I pay the money, I spend the money, I pay the money, I spend the money, I pay the money. That limit's kind of small and I spend a lot. If you can make my limit higher, that would help me. It would, I kind of know how to make my case. But that is that's pretty much it. I mean, it's very, very, straight. It's very straightforward. I hope that this was a easy explanation and it's not too confusing for you to understand. If you need any more clarification, I could either make another video or I can, show you a different credit card statement. Or if you have a particular question, drop it in the comments and I'll definitely be more than happy to address that for you guys. And if you have any more suggestions as far as videos go or things that you want to see, this kind of stuff for me is very, it feels very easy because I used to do it all the time. So I would be more than happy to do more stuff like that or explaining things about credit cards and things of that nature. And I just appreciate all of your support and your patronage when it comes to this channel. And it's just been wonderful to speak with you guys, to get to know you guys. And I have a few more videos coming out where I'm going to also be, giving more information about charge-offs and different ways to come at those. I think I have some really good videos that are going to be really good food for thought. I think it's going to really, really help a lot of people because I'm going to be presenting things that I don't think have ever been talked about, but are different things that you can do to get this stuff removed. And then, like I said, probably starting in the next couple of weeks, I can get back into business credit. And we'll start looking at that. And, for my people who care about that, to get you guys funding. And I want to, another thing, I really want to do a video soon on why business credit cards are literally the ultimate type of credit card and they're way better than personal. So even if you didn't want to have a business, having business credit cards are so much better than having personal credit cards. They are so much better. And I think that's very understated. They're not understated because there's people who definitely talked about it on YouTube, but on this channel, I think maybe I understated it. I don't think I've really shown people how if you have a good credit score, you should have maybe 3 good personal credit cards, but the rest of your credit cards should be business credit cards. So if that's a video that would interest you, or you would like to understand why that's important, then I'll definitely be willing to make that. But if there are any other type of videos that you would like, please email me with those ideas. You can leave it in the comments. I think comments are the easiest way for me to understand. Also, if you leave a comment after I respond to it, I just realized this, and you respond again, YouTube doesn't notify me from a second response. So if you said something and then I didn't respond, I probably didn't even see it. Like, I actually have to go look for it. Once you respond once you say one thing and I respond, I actually have to go into the YouTube app and search for your response in order to see it. I don't see it. So if I didn't respond to like your second question, that's the reason why. Or if it was like a lag, that's the reason why. So just be patient with me, and I'll get to any questions or concerns that you have, as soon as I can. Now what I've been doing is, like, every couple of hours, I'll just go right to a video and I'll search through the comments and I'll look for anything that wasn't responded to. And I just will try to go through most of the videos and then take a look. But I'm going to try to figure out how to fix that. If it's if there's actually a fix for it, or I'll try to figure out what I can do to make sure that I'm being notified of all the responses that you guys have. But again, thank you for everything. I won't keep you anymore. You guys have a wonderful day.